Inside of Auschwitz and the concentration camps, millions of innocent people were executed and murdered in cold blood, as the Nazis instigated the final solution. It was within these camps that the horrific treatment of Jews and other minorities, and those deemed undesirable by the leaders of Nazi Germany, witnessed the worst evils of the Third Reich. The gas chambers inside Auschwitz, for example, were the final place in which hundreds of thousands of people were killed for nothing but racial hatred and ideology. One lady who later became a saint was Edith Stein, and she sadly died inside the gas chambers at Auschwitz on the 9th of August 1942. So join us today as we look at the brutal execution of Edith Stein, the saint of Auschwitz, and remember to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. Edith Stein was born in Breslau in 1891 and was the youngest of 11 children. She was born into a Jewish family and she was a favourite child of her mother. As a child she was rather gifted and loved to learn. However, during her teenage years she began to question religion and seemed to turn her back on it, becoming more agnostic. She continued to learn and studied at the University of Breslau, developing an interest in philosophy, and she discovered a love of faith and continued to write about it. She was considered an intellectual elite, but as she was a woman she was discriminated against when she applied for teaching positions at universities. In 1921, Edith read the autobiography of a mystic named Teresa of Avila, and this changed her whole life and prompted her conversion to Catholicism. Her conversion was rather difficult for her family to take, turning her back upon her Jewish roots. However, she continued to listen to what she believed was right. The writings spoke to her, and she was then baptised in the Catholic faith, and she continued to teach students at a pre-college level until the Nazis took over control of Germany in 1933. Now when Hitler seized power, he and the Nazis brought in a number of horrifically brutal policies that sought to punish and persecute the Jews. Things were incredibly difficult for them living inside of Germany, and Edith Stein could not deny her heritage, which made her Jewish under the Nazi race laws. She would have lost her job inside of the university, with Jewish professors and lecturers forced to stand aside and lose their jobs. She had previously also written to the Pope to ask Pope Pius XI to denounce Hitler and his Third Reich, to put a stop to the abuse of Christ's name. She said, "For years the leaders of National Socialism have been preaching hatred of the Jews. I believe all over the world people have been waiting and hoping for the Church of Christ to raise its voice to put a stop to this abuse. Isn't the effort to destroy Jewish blood an abuse of the holiest humanity of our Saviour?" She did not get a response, however entered the Carmelite monastery of St. Maria von Friedem in Cologne in October and took on the name Theresia Benedictia Cruce, or Theresia Benedictia of the Cross. Whilst here she wrote more philosophy, and to help her escape the Nazi persecution, she was transferred to Holland to another monastery. This move prompted her to become more devout to the Carmelite rule, and she became an instructor inside of the convent, teaching Latin and philosophy. At the time, the Nazis had not invaded the Netherlands. However, Stein had resigned herself to the fact she would not live out the war, and she considered the fact that she would die inside a concentration camp. She even went as far as training herself how to live in a camp, training her body how to endure the cold weather and hunger, and she did this as the Nazis invaded the Netherlands in 1940. She was not safe here, and it was said in 1942 that all Jewish converts who had previously been spared were to be arrested, and then following this they were sent to the concentration camps. Stein was arrested on the 2nd of August 1942 by the SS, and her sister Rosa and her were taken to Amersfoort and then Westerbork, a transport camp, before they were sent to Auschwitz. Auschwitz at the time had been greatly expanded to facilitate mass extermination and suffering. It was made up of 3 different elements, Auschwitz I being the main labour camp, Auschwitz II Birkenau the extermination centre, and then Auschwitz III Monowitz, the IG Farben slave labour camp. As more crematoria were built at Auschwitz, the chances of surviving the camp were minuscule, and Edith Stein entered the camp full of faith and calm, almost at ease with her fate. She was offered an escape plan inside of the transport camp, but ultimately refused as she wished to share the fate of her brothers and sisters, saying she could not live with herself if she stood by. In the early hours of the 7th of August 1942, Edith Stein left to be taken to Auschwitz, and she arrived alongside 986 other Jews. When they arrived, they would have gone through the selection processes, being given numbers and tattoos before their heads were shaved, and they were forced to change their clothes, leaving any possessions they had, but this was for those who would make their way inside of the camp. The selections were brutal, and many of those who arrived at Auschwitz would not even set foot inside of the camp, with them being sent straight to the gas chambers. They may have arrived at the camp on the 9th of August, and it's clear that Edith Stein did not make the selection process, and she didn't really enter the camp. She would have then been marched straight to the gas chambers, with the SS guards watching her every move, and it must have been incredibly terrifying. En masse, a large group of Jews were to be killed inside of the gas chambers, and when they arrived they were forced to take off their clothes before entering the specific chamber. Edith Stein had only been at the camp a matter of minutes before she was forced into a small and cramped room, before the Zyklon B was placed into a ventilation shaft, and every person who entered that chamber was killed in minutes. The fear must have been horrific, and the panic and screaming piercing, but it's compelling to believe that Stein may have gone to her death with her faith strongly in her mind. Edith Stein left a large legacy on philosophy and on the Catholic Church. Teresa Benedicta of the Cross was beatified as a martyr in Cologne in 1987 and was then canonised, being made a saint in 1998. It was claimed she performed a miracle on a young girl who swallowed a lot of paracetamol, and that after her praying the young girl recovered and became completely healthy. Inside of the darkest evils of Auschwitz, a saint emerged from the horror and barbarism of the camp. Edith Stein was treated like so many Jews during the Holocaust, and for her heritage she suffered the ultimate price. She was an incredibly strong and devout lady of faith and a brilliant scholar, and she seemed to understand that the Second World War and the Nazis would bring about the complete destruction of faiths, lives, and even her own. The fact she even prepared herself for life inside Auschwitz shows us the horrific nature and incredibly tragic lengths she believed she needed to go to survive. The fact also that Edith Stein refused an escape plan shows how she faced her death and demise with dignity and immense bravery. Edith Stein remains another saint of Auschwitz. Once again, thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.